Hello, and welcome to Recovery Couch Chronicles podcast. Our first guest is Victor Estrada.
So we have some questions for you, and why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and about your experience with addiction and recovery.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit. Started off drinking when I was a kid, probably kindergarten, around that age. My parents used to go four-wheeling, and they would hand me their drinks. You know, it was like, here, hold the cup, or hold the bottle, hold the can. So I would hold it, and I would take sips, and then sips started turning into full cans. By the time I was 9, my mom used to grow, and I was always curious of what she was smoking. So, you know, just being that little bad kid, started smoking or experimenting, and then that just led into further drug use. By the time I was 15, I was a full-blown alcoholic, asking for help from my family. Went to treatment, my first treatment when I was 15, again when I was 16, again when I was 17. Ended up in a mental hospital because I tried to commit suicide, and then ended up going from the mental hospital into a treatment. And then right after that was over, you know, I was living in Vegas, and I was introduced to this new drug that I had only heard about, and I started doing it, and I instantly fell in love with it, you know, and that led from 17 to 40, you know, using my drug of choice. Do you guys care if I say what it was?
No, go ahead.
Okay, started using meth. At 17, my meth use started off as just, you know, doing it at the job site with my boss, you know, and then started going on the weekends after I quit my job, and I considered myself a weekend warrior. By the time I was like 18, I'm like deciding, okay, I'm going to start selling this stuff. And then that just led pretty much deeper and deeper into my addiction. By the time I was 20, I had a daughter on the way, and I didn't know how to work, you know, or hold down a job. So I was selling drugs, and that led to my daughter being taken away when I was 21, right after she was born. She was 5 weeks old when she was taken from me. After my daughter was taken, my addiction got a lot deeper. I had this idea that if I can't see my daughter and get my daughter back in my life, that I was going to continue to use drugs until I died. So I pretty much went on a suicide mission after being released from jail. I was up for 29 days. On the 29th day, I freaked out. I thought everybody was trying to kill me. Everybody was the cops. Just, you know, not only being paranoid from the drug use, but being paranoid because I hadn't slept in almost a full month. So I ended up going to the emergency room, seeking help, and ended up being in the emergency room in the waiting room for about 12 hours. My mom got off her shift at the hospital, got me pulled into the back right away. I remember getting an IV put in my arm to hydrate me, and then them coming in with this big, you know, urine bottle that they give people when they're in the hospital. And they're like, we need a UA from you. And I was like, oh, these are the cops. And I pulled the IV out of my arm and walked out of the emergency room and told my mom, let's go. And went to my mom's house where I swore up and down she was trying to kill me. All she was trying to do was get me to go to sleep and eat. And then that led to, you know, my first actual adult treatment center, or detox, and then treatment. And then from there, you know, I started doing really good for a little bit. I think I had got about 6 months clean, and in that 6 months, I started getting visitation rights with my daughter. I was working, I was going to treatment, I was in treatment. I was involved in all kinds of 12-step groups, every AA, NA, CA, anything that was available, I was in the meetings, right? After leaving treatment, I was staying at my mom's house, volunteering every day at the treatment center. My mom's husband didn't like that I was, you know, just constantly going to meetings and constantly volunteering. He was mad because I didn't want to get a job, and they kicked me out of their house. You know, my mom did it because, you know, that was her husband and that's what he wanted. So, you know, I left there and went back to where I was living originally, in this trailer park that was like it was called trailer hell, and everybody did drugs there, and everybody sold drugs there, and it was probably the worst trailer park in like the whole Clark County.
That's sad.
Yeah. And then, you know, I was hanging out with my dad every day, and my dad was you know, he would just get off of work and he would go drink, so I would go hang out at the casino with him. And one day he just said, Happy New Year's. It was New Year's 95 going into 96. My dad slid me a beer. I picked up the beer, drank it. I had a shot with him, and I jumped right on the payphone, called my connect, and said, "Hey man, I need some dope." And he said, "Man, I thought you were dead." And the cycle started all over again, right? So that was 96, and 96 in about February of 96, right after my daughter's birthday, her first birthday, I gave my daughter up for adoption, and just continued to live life the way that I was living life. That was my first time going to prison in 97. I did 22 months, got out, and just like the cycle just kept going. And it got pretty bad, right? It got bad enough to where I was in unhealthy relationships, a pretty toxic one for about 4 years. And after like 4 years of this, like living in hell with this female, I decided I'm going to move to Washington, right? And so I moved up to Washington with the goal of I'm going to go up there, I'm going to change my life. And it worked for about a week, right? Started drinking, found some guys that I could drink with that were closer to my age, and so I was working at the time, got a paycheck, and then my second paycheck, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to start selling dope. And the cycle started all over again. So 2004, right here in Wenatchee, Washington, I ended up catching my first felony cases, and I went to prison, and then I got out of prison, and 17 days later, I was on my way back to prison for 3 more years. I did 3 years. First time I did 18 months, the second time was 3 years, and then I went back again a year after I got out for another 5-year sentence. I did 4 on that, got out in 2014, and I said, I'm going to change my life, and unfortunately that didn't happen that time. Got out, got another toxic relationship, and wanted to get clean. My girlfriend at the time didn't want to get clean. She wanted to keep using. And so when she left, I tried committing suicide again. Something happened, the door popped open, I ripped this cord off from my neck, and you know, I knew right then and there that like my life wasn't ready to be over, and I was going to do something different. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. So I reached out to my family. They were like, no, we're not ready for this bullshit. One of my friends called me, took me to his house for the night, and the whole night I was like, let me go, bro, let me just go get some dope and I'll be back. And he would not let me leave. And I drank all night and tattooed, and right, he was like, yeah, bro, you could sit in my house, you could drink, you could tattoo, but you can't go anywhere and go get drugs, bro. I'm not gonna let you go back down that path. And the next morning my family called me and says, hey, we're coming to get you. And that was going to be like the start of my journey into recovery, and it wasn't. I was like so like depressed that I kept drinking, and I was posting my feelings on social media about, you know, oh, I just want to go out there and save my ex and all this stuff. And somebody from the program, or one of the programs, reached out to me and said, hey, you know, you've been in recovery before. You talked about it with me when we met. And she's like, why don't you go to a meeting with me? And I'm like, I'll go right now. And she's like, well, I'm not out of town right now, but there's a meeting at the hospital right now. You should go check it out. And so I did, right? I went to this meeting. Excuse me. I went to this meeting, felt really uncomfortable, felt really out of place. I knew I was in the right place, though. And the next day she came back into town, picked me up for a meeting. And I got a couple weeks. And then I relapsed because I got into a fight because of my ex with somebody, and I went home and I drank, and I called my friend and I told her what happened, and she's like, okay, here's your new clean date, March 26, 2015. She said, hold on to it, you don't ever got to use again, I'll pick you up tomorrow for a meeting. And so ever since then, you know, I've been clean. That was the short version.
Yeah, you did a pretty good job of breaking down, what was that, 20 plus years into about 10 minutes? So, obviously, there's a lot of holes to fill there, but
a lot.
Make recovery the epidemic. I know you've been involved with that for years, but I've never understood how that started and what that was.
So 2017, I got invited to this conference. It was called Washington Recovery Alliance. It was their yearly summit. and I got invited to it. I went to it. I got invited to be like a little more involved, and so I went to the following year. I went to the retreat that they had for people that were, getting ready to start coalitions, and we were sitting at this table, and the lady that was in charge at the time, Melody, she said, Victor, like she wasn't just talking to me in general, she was talking to a whole table, and we were talking about how, a lot of the legislation was focused on the opioid epidemic, right?
Right.
And she mentioned, what about the crack epidemic? What about the meth epidemic? It's not just about opiates. We need to find funding for all of this. And she says, what we need to do is we need to make recovery the epidemic. And I was like, that is a cool ass slogan. And I hashtagged that. And it was 2018. I want to say it was like November 2018. I was like, hey, can I like make a hashtag of that, post it on Facebook, and see where it goes. And she's like, do it. I have a lot of my social media is based off recovery, people in recovery from all over the United States, and some from like I got friends in Australia, friends in Canada, and so I made my first shirt, and I took a picture with it, and I was actually standing over like the Columbia River by the gorge, and I took a picture, posted it on social media, and people were like, where can I buy one of those shirts? And so, the goal was, at the time, was to just like make a couple shirts, and then that was it, and deliver them to the people that asked for them. And then I was like, why not make something bigger than this? Like, why not use this as a way to help people trying to seek recovery? So I printed off like 100 T-shirts the first time, and so what I did was I paid like a certain amount, and I charged a little bit. I think I charged like $13 more than what I paid for them.
Right.
And I was using a percentage of that to go back into like a fund to help people that were either seeking recovery, coming out of prison, coming out of jail, on their way to treatment, coming out of treatment, didn't have nowhere to go, and they needed funding for recovery housing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use a percentage of this money to go into a fund for that, right? And a couple of people pitched in, and after that, like we made our second order, we just kept doing it over and over again. It went from just a plain T-shirt with some just random font on it to reaching out to somebody and somebody helping me make the new design, the one that's on my sweatshirt right now. And then another friend of mine that does tattoos was like, drew me up some stuff, printed those on T-shirts, and we just kept selling them over and over at different events. And we're able to raise a lot of money and use all them funds to help people in different situations. There was a couple deaths, not just of people overdosing. It was like a friend's grandson died, and our first was in the hospital, so we like donated a good chunk of money to them. And then when that grandson died, we donated some more money to them. Any other person that passed away, we would donate $100, $300, whatever we could. It even got to like, there was women trying to get into Oxford House. And I would go get a cashier's check and give it to the house and be like, hey, here's their moving fee and an extra $100 so they can try to like get a job and pay their own rent. And so that's pretty much how Make Recovery the Epidemic started up.
I see you post a lot on social media, and that's something I hadn't really considered as like, as far as using that as a tool to help like connect people, or resource, connect people to other people. Connecting addicts to addicts. So, like, what's been your experience with social media? I know you have like a pretty decent like amount of reach and following.
I think social media can be used far and wide. That was how I got into everything that I'm into today. It started off, somebody added me to this Facebook page called Can't Go Back, and I seen some people on there doing some stuff that I was like, whoa, what's that? And I reached out to the guy that like started the page, and I was like, bro, like, how do I get involved in this? And he's like, let me connect you with this person, right? And it was it was the executive director of the Washington Recovery Alliance at the time. Her name was Lauren, and he connected me with her, and she's the one who originally invited me to the first summit. And it was just like, man, like if it wasn't for social media, like I wouldn't know these people today.
Right.
I would have never known that there was more stuff about recovery that wasn't 12-step related, right? I probably would have still been as closed-minded as I was when I first got into recovery, thinking that there was only one way to recover, and that was complete abstinence. I heard about harm reduction, and I heard about, like safe injection sites, and I heard about, needle exchanges, and And it opened my mind, to find out, like, when they talk about needle exchanges, if you get a person using the same dirty needle over and over again, they get an infection, they get a disease, they die, right? But if you're getting somebody clean needles, right, they have a chance to maybe one day seek recovery. Like I know one person in town who does a needle exchange, and they're always asking him like, well, how do I get clean? How do I get clean? And he'll bring them to meetings. Right. And to say this is how I did it. It doesn't say that it's going to work for everybody, right? But it's a different opportunity.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't have the connections, with a lot of people in recovery. Like I got invited to another thing out in Vegas. It was called Ryan Hampton, don't get mad at me, right? So this dude started another thing, and it was like the voices of addiction. And
I should have called ours that. That's a good name.
Yeah, right. And it was he started doing it. It was like all people through social media all across the United States, and they had you had to go on there and like give a little description of who you are, what you do in your community, and I got to like tell them, like I got to write this like little paragraph about who I was, what I've been doing, and what kind of changes I'm trying to make. So I got invited down to Vegas. They paid for my flight out there, and I got to join like I don't even remember how many other hundreds of people that were there, but we got to spend like 2 days in a conference and talk about recovery nationwide, and making a difference and an impact in our communities, and that just led to a whole bunch of other stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite non-recovery related social media person that you follow?
Mr. Beast.
I've heard that. So, what is your daylight job?
My daylight job, or so my daylight job.
Who do you get your W-2? Who's that?
All right. Well, so right now I currently work for the Women's Resource Center. I've been working for them for about a little over 6 years. It started off, I was working in transitional housing. Transitional housing consisted of me pretty much being like security for this building of people coming out of homelessness, moving into transitional housing. And then that led to me getting a job doing homeless outreach, right? And I was out there on the streets every day, handing out, whether it was like sack lunches, clothing in the wintertime, handing out blankets, jackets, sweaters, gloves, beanies, hand warmers, socks. I was known as a sock guy out there because I got a substantial.
Socks are important.
Yeah, very important.
Underrated.
Yes. One of the most number one needed items on the streets, right? Your feet get wet, your feet get cold, your feet get infected.
Well, also because it's always, I feel like the socks they're giving out are always like really cheapo ones.
No, I gave up the best, bro.
The best?
Bombas. No. Bombas. No. So Bombas Socks does this thing where for every pair of socks they sell, they donate, right? They are probably the most expensive socks that I've ever seen on the market. It's like $88 for 6 pairs.
What?
And so they give out, I've been getting 5,000 pairs every year for the last.
5,000 pairs?
Yeah.
Where do you keep those stored?
At storage.
You have a storage unit full of
No, we have at the transitional housing where I used to work at, we have a basement.
Oh, okay.
And so we have a storage unit, like a storage room there, and we got boxes of socks. So
I feel like with that many socks, you should be finding ways to knit those into sweaters.
No, we actually have a lady there that donates blankets and scarves and beanies. But yeah, the socks were the hit. People love socks, right?
Give me some of them socks.
They're the best. They're
Bombas.
Yeah.
Bombas socks.
Yeah.
Wow.
So other than that working as the homeless outreach led into my current job now. So the contract with the city ended. Another organization was trying to hire me as a recovery coach, and that's how I got my current position as a recovery coach. My work agreed to take the money from them to employ me and keep me on as an employee. I did it for, I want to say I started like April, May of 2021, and my contract was up the end of this year, and I just got renewed for another 2-year contract. So I'm still employed, still going to be doing this. So what my job consists of right now is, it started off was like, hey, you're going to go into the jail, you're going to work with these people that are incarcerated and give them some hope and work with them as a coach, recovery coach. You know, and what I tell the guys in jail when I go there is like, okay, you ever played basketball before? And they're like, yeah. I said, when you first started playing basketball, who taught you how to throw the ball? And they're like, the coach. I said, well, that's what I do for recovery, right? And so that's what I do, right? I show people what recovery is. I show them the plays like a playbook. Like, look, you get out, I'll come pick you up. I'll take you to a recovery house. If you get accepted, you know, you need to get to meetings. I'll get you to meetings. You need to go find a job. I'll help you find a job. You need ID. I'll help you get ID. You know, anything that you need that you're willing to put in the work for, I'm willing to help you.
Right, as a recovery coach.
Yeah, as a recovery coach.
How does their approach to recovery, like what's your opinion?
What's the difference between like a recovery coach and a 12-step program?
Exactly.
So the difference is that like we believe recovery is linear, right? It doesn't mean you have to stay clean. It doesn't mean you have to work steps. It doesn't mean you have to have a sponsor. You know, it's like knowing that there's other paths to recovery, whether somebody chooses to do, let's say, celebrate recovery, or they want to just practice complete abstinence on their own.
Faith-based
Yeah.
recovery around here.
It's just like supporting them where they're at, meeting them where they're at, you know, and just being that support network for them, right? It's just a different approach, you know. It's like when you go to treatment, they do an assessment, they tell you this and this is wrong, is what's wrong with you. You need to do this, and this, and for a recovery coach, it's not about, we're not trying to diagnose you, we're just trying to help you find the right path.
Right.
Yeah. It's like the first time I went to get an assessment done, right? And I'm sitting there, and this lady's asking me all these questions, and then I asked her at the end of it, I said, so what do you do when you go home from work to unwind? And she says, well, I usually go home and have a glass of wine. I said, so you're not an addict? She's like, no, I went to college. And I'm like, so how can you diagnose me and tell me that I'm an addict? She's like, well, because I went to college and they told me that, you know, addiction, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, okay, I get that. Like, I know I'm an addict, right? But how can you diagnose me?
What experience can you share with me?
Especially if she's going to go home and I have a glass of wine, I'm going to go buy a pound of meth and I'm going to get loaded, right? It's like,
we're like the same person. You have a glass of wine, I got an ounce, it's whatever.
Yeah, there is no, just an ounce for me.
Rookie number.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing. I mean, is a requirement of the recovery coaching that you have to have had lived experience?
It's preferred.
It's preferred. I mean, because it seems like everybody I've run into has been. I haven't seen anybody that hasn't. But I always wondered if that was.
Well, they use so what I know is that they prefer people that are with lived experience, but they'll also be willing to like people that are family members of addicts, right? You know, somebody that watched their kids go through drug addiction. So it just depends, you know. It depends on the person seeking the training. It also depends on the employer. You know, I know everybody that I know that has gotten jobs as a recovery coach, we want lived experience, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who else knows an addict better than an addict themselves?
Right.
Right? Like, we know all the ways of manipulation, deception, how, you know, who's trying to hustle somebody. We know that because we've been there, we've done that. You know, if somebody wanted to do something else that wasn't a recovery coach, like, go be an SUD counselor. You know, substance use disorder, like, go learn about the textbook. You know, we have that working knowledge of what drug addiction is.
Right. We live the experiences that they wrote the textbooks based on.
You know, just curious about experience with the Milano Club here.
Milano Club is an amazing place. You know, it's a place for us to come have our meetings. It's a place for us to come socialize. You know, I've been to different Milano Clubs in different areas, and I think there is, you know, nicer ones and bigger ones and all that, but it's like when you're in a local Milano Club, it's like home. You know what I'm saying? So for me, like this, not this new one right now that we're in, but like the old.
Well, we just recently moved.
Yeah, moved within the last year, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, since I've been coming to meetings, and I've been in the rooms for 7 years and 8 months, you know, since I came back into recovery, you know, the Milano Club has been like home. Like, honestly, like, I can go there anytime. You know, they were like the host of the 24-hour meetings. So I spent a lot of time there. You know, I actually used to have the keys there, you know, and was able to, like, if somebody needed to get in or if somebody needed to open it up for a meeting, or, you know, it was just a place where it was comfortable, even though it was really, like, dated and kind of like
old dingy, old
kind of grungy.
We can.
But it was like home, like, you know, like You know, if you want to start a meeting up, you can go there and just like go upstairs and open up a new meeting, and you know, it was comfortable.
It was like a really old, crappy pair of sneakers that you've had for like 12 years.
So, Dylan was asking about the coalition when you walked out, though. So Central Washington Recovery Coalition was, you know, non-existent up until 2018. So when I talked about earlier about going to this recovery summit, and I want to say it was in Shelton at the Northwest Indian Treatment Center. They had like hosted it for us, and there was these other coalitions there, and I was like, what is this coalition?
Yeah.
You keep talking about
Such a big word.
It is, right? What a coalition is just a group of people, right?
No. It sounds better than
it's a group. It's a group of people working on an issue, right?
Yeah.
So I heard about these different coalitions. At the time, there was probably like 4 or 5 in Washington.
Like recovery coalition?
Yeah, that were like specifically working on recovery issues. And so my friend Lauren reached out to me one day, and she's like, Victor, you think you can get a group of people together that would be interested on like the movement of recovery? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could find some people, right? So I brought it up, and you know, with about 5 or 6 people, and a couple of them people told a couple other people. Somebody said, you guys can use my parents' house, because their house was connected to their parents, like 2 houses on one property. And
Homestead.
yeah, so we went to this house, and my friend Lauren came out from Seattle, and a couple other people came. One of my friends from Tacoma came, and we sat down in a group. We had the drug court judge there. We had she was there on her own accord, not as a judge. Right. We had a couple other community leaders show up, you know, from a couple different like nonprofit organizations, and I think we even had DSHS show up just to see what it was about. And you know, we put some thoughts on the table. What do we want to do? What was our mission going to be? You know, and our mission was to like bring public awareness, you know, to the fact that there was a problem in our community, you know, and we wanted to try to be the solution to help raise awareness to like make some changes, not only locally but like statewide.
Right.
So a group of us formed. We started having monthly coalition meetings where we would meet up and talk about different things we wanted to do. You know, one of the things that they wanted us to do was, you know, have an event to raise awareness in the community. So 2018, we did our first Hands Across the Bridge. And when we did our first Hands Across the Bridge, you know, thinking that, oh, nobody's going to show up, you know, it's just going to be us from the coalition.
Shot in the dark.
Yeah, and when we did it, it ended up being people coming from like Okanagan County, Grant County, you know, Chelan and Douglas County. Even had some friends from the other side of the mountains come over and give us some support, you know, and it turned out to be like about 120 people there at our first event. You know,
not bad for a first turnout.
Yeah, not bad at all. You know, we made these T-shirts, and we had a barbecue afterwards, and like we had gotten enough money at like some they were like event funds, you know, to buy the food and stuff like that. So we did all that. We had this first one. The second one was even better. You know, the second one, we were going to do it at the park, but it started raining, so we're like, let's do it in front of the Old Long Club, right? We did it right there on the sidewalk. We put up some pop-up tents or covers, and you know, we barbecued outside on the street, like where cars would park.
Nice.
You know, and that was it was like a really good turnout. That year we had like the drug court attorney come in and speak. We had a couple other people speak. We had who's now Lauren, who's now a state representative. She spoke at the time. You know, I spoke, and then a couple other people spoke. You know, just about what we were trying to do in the community and the changes that we were trying to make. You know, we started talking about Recovery Advocacy Day, which is something that you know, I've been doing since I want to say 2018 was my first one.
Is that a specific day on the calendar?
This upcoming year will be February 9th. I just posted it on social media. Diana has it here somewhere at the club. So what it is, you know, we'll go in front of our legislators from our district, and we'll go and talk to them about, you know, what bills that are going to be presented, and then we'll speak on them bills and how it can impact the recovery community.
Right.
So, you know, we're going, I know I'm going, I know quite a few other people that are going to go, you know, and then the WRA will give us some funds, you know, either to rent some vans, and then they'll pay for our hotel stay for the night, and then we'll go in on February 9th, and we'll go in to the I almost said the White House, but not the White House.
It's probably white. It's off-white, maybe eggshell.
We'll be going to the state capitol in Olympia, right? And then what we do is they set up our appointments for us, and then we go in there and we talk to our state legislators. There's usually 2 legislators from each district, and then we'll talk to the senator, right? And we go in there. One thing I got to do the first year I went was I got to be the presenter, and I walked in there with all my booking photos, and I said, I put all my pictures down, and I probably had like 15 booking photos. And I said, this is who I was, and let me tell you who I am today. And I gave a little quick introduction of myself, of who I was in the community, and got to talk about these bills. And so in 2000, I want to say it was 2018, no, maybe 2019, 2020, because that was before COVID, and then 2021 we did it on Zoom, 2022 we did it on Zoom. And this year we'll be back in person, but like every time that we've went and we've spoken on some legislative, stuff, we've always gotten them to back our votes, and help, and they've passed the bills that we've asked for. Some of the bills that we passed for was more funding for recovery coaches.
Right.
Another one we spoke on and that got passed was no wrong door. So if somebody wants to go to treatment, then it doesn't matter if you have insurance or not, they'll accept you, and then they'll figure it out when you're in there, right? Because, when a person wants to go to treatment, a person's ready then.
The last thing you want to do is a bunch of paperwork and call.
If they have to wait 5 days to get into treatment, there's a good chance after that first hour of them saying they're ready to go, they're not going to want to go. So that got passed, but then, because something happened in the way it was worded, that they're re-editing it so they can get it right. Another bill that we spoke on was Ricky's Law, which in Washington State, Ricky's Law is if your parents think that you're going to die because of your drug use, they can have you committed in Washington State, and not mentally, but into a treatment center.
Right.
And they'll hold you for 72 hours.
I didn't know that. You can have people committed, not from a mental, but because of the harm, especially with fentanyl. That makes sense.
So, that was kind of like a hard one because they have 2 treatment centers, right? One is Spokane and one is Chehalis that will accept you, and if you're closer to them areas, you'll get there. Right. But for somebody that's in Wenatchee trying to get Ricky's Law enacted on them, it's a little bit harder because now they got to figure out how to get you to one of those treatment centers. Right. So that's another thing that's it got passed and it's worked for certain areas, but it's something that we're still working on.
Yeah, we have to figure out how it applies to all scenarios as they come up.
Yeah. And then another thing the coalition's done since we started, there's an Narcan vending machines, that we have in 3 counties. We got them in Chelan County right here. One's at the Lawn Club. We have one in Grant County at the Sleep Center, and then we also have one up in Okanagan County at Advance, right? And they run the Recovery Navigator program up there. So that was something that we did. This year we did a Overdose Awareness Day on International Overdose Awareness Day. We had lost a friend in the community right before that, prior to that day. So we did it, not only for him but for everybody else. So every year from now on, we're going to try to have one on August 31st of every year, and just make it like an annual event, just like our Hands Across the Bridge is an annual event.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other events that you know of going on in the area?
In our area, that's pretty much it for us. I know before COVID happened, we were planning we were going to call it the 509 takeover, right? And we were going to have a big concert. We were going to reach out to some recovery rap artists that we know, and we were going to rent this big park down in Moses, this amphitheater down in Moses Lake, and we were going to everybody from the 509, we're going to take over this park, but recovery related, right? We were going to have security, we were going to give out merch, we were going to have these people perform, and then we were going to have some guest speakers. And because of COVID, it got delayed for a couple of years. So we're hoping sometime in 2023 that we can make that event happen. And now that they're doing some fixing of this park over here in Wenatchee, we're probably going to have it in Wenatchee because it's central to where all the counties come together. So and still try to do the same kind of thing. Have some people that we know that are recovery rappers come and perform. Still have some guest speakers talk about recovery. and then just like make that an annual event too.
You've been around the state a lot, right? I know you travel a lot, go to out-of-town meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
And I always hear this, but I always kind of wonder if people are just saying that. People talk about that we have like good recovery,
Solid
recovery, and like good
bonds,
relationships, vibes, auras. They say the recovery here is
strong,
and as opposed to the
bigger cities.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of natural. You get more people and just. But I like in your experience, what has been the difference between like population and recovery, or what does it look like in the different areas of the state that you've been?
This is what I can say, and I share this in a lot of meetings. It doesn't matter where you go, you'll always feel at home, right? That's one. You can go to a meeting in any state, because I've been to quite a few states and a lot of different areas in Washington. No matter where I go, I'm always walking and I feel like I'm at home. But there's also the same drama, bullshit. Just when it's in bigger cities, it's on a bigger scale.
Right.
I think the reason why people say that we have some solid recovery here and we have like a good connection with our fellowship is because we are smaller. Right. And we all know each other, and for me, when I got into recovery, it was about I was listening to what the older people had to say, and how much they had some time, and I got to like, I don't know, someone used to say, like I get to steal a little bit of everything from everybody, and not like steal in a bad way, but I get to like take their words, take them in, decipher them, and use them as my own, right? And then some of that just starts to make sense when you start working a program. Right, and then you actually learn how to apply it to your life, But yeah, man, anywhere I've been, man, it's always felt like home, and it's always when people that I know that come here to town, whether it's for one of our celebrations for one of our birthdays, or I ask somebody to come speak, and they stick around for a meeting and they hear the recovery that's coming out of Wenatchee, they're like, man, you guys are on fire for recovery out here. And it happens everywhere, man. Everywhere I've been, I always hear something that's like, oh man, I need to hear that. Yeah. Or man, I've never heard that before, or heard it said that way before.
That's the fun part, I think.
Yeah. One time I was in a meeting, and we had it was like a men's sponsorship meeting, and this guy came in, and I still use this till today. That what he said 5 years ago was that if you don't have the best sponsor, get a new sponsor. If you don't have the best home group, get a new home group. And I was just like, man, I do have the best sponsor. If I didn't, I wouldn't have them anymore. But that was like an eye-opener for me. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it just depends on who you're around. And, you can go to a really crappy meeting. I've been to a few. And I've been to a few in town. And it's just like super toxic, and it's happens. Yeah. Yeah. It's inevitable. It depends on who you're at and where you're at,
Yeah. I'm curious. Dylan, you've been in recovery for how long?
16 years.
So, and I'm not saying you both are old. I'm just saying both of you are older.
Whatever.
And you were in recovery in like the 90s. Like, what to you guys? Like, what is the biggest difference from meetings in the early 2000s or 90s as opposed to today? Is there any? Is there any noticeable difference?
I know. So I know for me in the
this is my biggest question. You see people on their phone in meetings. What did people do before that?
Beepers. Their beeper would go off in a meeting and they look at it real quick, and then they would get up and leave and go use a payphone.
Right.
Outside.
A what?
Yeah, a payphone.
What is that?
It's this funny box that you used to put quarters in and dial a number, and then
it's a vending machine for
boneless
FaceTime.
Yeah.
We used to be able to smoke inside.
That too. Yeah. That was cool. Yeah. There was ashtrays everywhere.
That makes a lot of sense.
Smoke-filled room.
Oh,
coffee.
Jeez.
But now, man, another thing too, man, about the lawn clubs is it was always just like I built a lot of good memories at the whole club, right? I remember celebrating one of my birthdays there, and the room being so packed that I was like, I'm never having a birthday meeting here again.
Breathing each other in.
It was so hot.
Warm.
It was so small that people were standing up, and the room was just packed. And
like a subway.
Moving to this club, the new building, has been cool. It like we get to bring our memories from there here, you know, and then we get to make new memories, you know. I was talking about, you know, man, maybe we need a bigger club already.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
we
possibility.
filled it up pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Build it and they will come, right?
Yeah, with all the new activities and the yoga and the art classes and everything.
Any closing statements?
Do drugs. If you need help, reach out to somebody. Reach out to the Lawn Club. It's a safe place for you to go and you know, meet with somebody in recovery, because there's always somebody here that's in recovery, and you know, if you're struggling, they can help. You can also call the phone. You know, if you need Narcan, there's a Narcan vending machine right inside the door. It's free. They got coffee, and if you can't afford it, you can get a free cup. If not, I'll pay for it later. Just tell them Victor said you can get a free cup of coffee.